Hey, what's happening, everybody? Tim from Alpha Wolf Trading coming at you with another CEO interview. This is a cannabis company, but also a biotech company. A lot of science involved here. Uh, Avicanna is the name of the company, and the ticker symbol is AVCNF. And we have with us today the CEO, Aras Azadian. Is that
I like it.
accurate?
It's
Okay.
good. Very good. Nailed it.
All right. And what I'd like to do, Aras, first of all, thanks for coming in.
Of course.
And second of all, I want you to give me a little bit of background on yourself, what your background is, what you see for Avicanna moving forward. You already have a couple of products that are out there being sold right now and apparently very effective, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, well, thanks for having me, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for making the time. For the folks that are going to watch this, thanks for making the time in advance. My background, business, economics, MBA, went to school in Spain, business school in Spain. Came back to Toronto, where I'm from, Canada. I worked as a management consultant, predominantly in the biotech industry. Went into an executive role in a biotech company, where focused on oncology. I absorbed a lot of that, process in terms of drug development, clinical development, and how these type of products are brought into the marketplace. And when the cannabis opportunity really arose in Canada with the federal legalization, that's where I saw the opportunity to provide that level of sort of strategy, that level of standardized medicine, clinically backed, evidence-backed products using cannabinoids. And we started the company in 2015, really 2016. We incorporated as a biopharma company focused on cannabinoids. So we don't sell weed, we don't sell joints. We take cannabinoids that are derived from the plant. We standardize it. We deliver them in a particular way that is essential or necessary for a particular benefit, functional benefit, clinical benefit, and then we offer those to patients. So we do have an extensive drug pipeline, that is going to go towards that FDA, Health Canada level clinical development and drug registration. But in parallel, we took the opportunity to take those particular products and advanced proprietary drug delivery systems and launch some of those products across medical cannabis systems. So some of you may know, at a state level in the United States, medical cannabis through medical documentation is obviously allowed. In Canada, at a federal level, nationally, medical cannabis is allowed. And we're proud to say we have about 16 SKUs. The largest pharmacy chain in Canada, Shoppers Drug Mart, that's essentially the Canadian CVS or Walgreens. We're selling these products in South America. We're selling these products in the Caribbean now. So we have commercialized those, what would be a pharmaceutical pipeline or drugs, across cannabis legislation or medical cannabis legislation, which then provides us with early stage data, revenue, validation, proof of concept, market acceptance, medical community acceptance, all of which, a biotech company that's 5 or 6 years old wouldn't have at this stage, So it's quite an interesting opportunity to be a biopharma or biotech company that is utilizing cannabinoids. They're functional in many ways. They're very beneficial to patients. We're seeing the outcomes. What we're trying to do is to ensure that outcome is repeatable, consistent, and to provide the evidence so more and more patients in the medical community could support and endorse sort of the benefits of this. So that's the very high level. Of course, happy to get into the more details of that.
So, I mean, from your history in biotech, what on average, how long does it take to get approval of one drug, and how many years does it take, and how much does it cost? Do you recall that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a wide range, right? I mean, you can take a product that is already sort of approved and do a generic of it, so it'll be relatively faster. But to take a new compound, like a completely new drug, let's say you discover new molecule A, and to take that through safety, toxicity, dose escalation, then phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, drug registration, you're looking at, I would say, I think the average timeline they say is around 10 to 15 years, per drug. And the average cost of that is hundreds of millions of dollars in particular in a new molecule, right? So, and GW Pharmaceutical, which was recently acquired by Jazz Pharmaceuticals for about $7 billion, they did that. They did that with CBD, and that's why there's a bit of a CBD frenzy out in the market. They did that. They spent hundreds of millions. They spent 20 years. They got the first FDA approved drug, and they have that product called Epidiolex in the market. So that is the process, and because of the work they've done and because of the safety toxicity profile that is relatively good in terms of cannabinoids, we have access to commercializing those drugs. I'm talking about the drugs. I'm not even talking about medical cannabis, but we have the ability to register those drugs in particular markets very fast. And we are going to have, we believe, 3 of those registrations this year. And we recently released that in a guidance that we're going to have 3 pharmaceutical drug preparations approved this year. It's going to be in particular markets. It's not in the US because of the GW Pharmaceutical exclusivity, but we are going to release drugs, and we did it with a fraction of the cost and very fast, and that's on the drug side. But in parallel, medical cannabis has become this very unique, and I don't want to use the word, but I'll say it, loophole, in a way that it allows you to accelerate the commercialization of a medical product without a drug approval. So today, if you go on the Shoppers Drug Mart, Medical Cannabis by Shoppers Drug Mart website in Canada, you will see 16 products from me that I have already commercialized that patients are using. That is the same products they're only products that are actually available in major Canadian hospitals today. The products that the top neurologists in the country are recommending and prescribing for their epileptic patients. I have those products in the market today, generating revenue, generating data, generating brand recognition and credibility. And it did not cost us hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think the potential of medical cannabis and pharmaceutical cannabinoid-based products and how functional they are is accepted generally, but I don't think people are realizing how big the market opportunity is, and the reason why that's not being acknowledged or understood yet is they're mixing the companies like Avicanna with the recreational, right? So they're going, oh, Avicanna, you're in the cannabis industry, so how many pre-roll joints do you sell, or how much weed are you selling? I'm not selling weed. I'm not competing in the cannabis industry. I am competing in the oncology, pain, neurology, dermatology industry. And I'm competing at a global level, not at a recreational level that's limited to a particular state or to a particular country. But I think that's the misconception, and that's where the opportunity really arises.
So one of your big pain products is actually an ointment, right? And what's unique about your drug is the delivery, right?
Absolutely.
Through the skin. It actually gets to the area that is inflamed, right?
Yeah, it's not always inflammation. I mean, that's a big one. So when you look at a product like Voltaren, that drug is approved as a pain product, as a local inflammatory drug, right? But our topical product is actually a gel. So it's I think I actually have the product here. So this is the commercial version of it. So under the Roll Fido brand, you can see the Health Canada kind of ugly symbols they make us add, but this is a deep tissue transdermal gel. And this is a product that has been designed to ensure that the cannabinoids, which are the active drug here, the same way diclofenac is the active drug for Voltaren, CBD here is the active drug, and it is encapsulated enough to maintain integrity and stability, but it's also encapsulated and delivered in a particular way that gets past the skin and gets to the areas that you want the cannabinoids to interact with the receptors. So that is joints, muscles. We know a large portion of the Canadian population that is using this product is using it for pain. We know a lot of people are using it for fibromyalgia. We know some people are using it for osteoarthritis. The fantastic thing about this product is that it doesn't have the negative side effects that a lot of other pharmaceutical medical products could have in terms of a topical pain relief, including diclofenac, which has its side effects, including steroids that have their side effects. You're utilizing here an active cannabinoid ingredient that does not have that level of side effects. So any type of marginal relief or benefit is then quite safe. And This is a product that has recently launched within the Canadian marketplace and a couple of other markets, and we're expanding now into several other countries.
And that technology is proprietary to you guys, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We filed patents for it within the U.S. We filed patents for it globally. We developed it. You know, we have, I believe, still very strongly believe that we have the most, I would say, the most strong or the most enhanced scientific platform when it comes to drug delivery of cannabinoids. We're originally part of a Johnson & Johnson incubator where we did our drug development work and R&D here in Toronto's Mars Discovery District. We've collaborated with the likes of University of Toronto's Faculty of Pharmacy. We work with a lot of the top minds, but really our own head of R&D and our own R&D department, I think, is industry leading, and we developed this stuff from the ground up. So we spent 3 years in developing that particular formulation. This isn't some base cream that we're buying and we're sprinkling CBD on top. And in fact, it's a product that's designed to do exactly what we want it to do. And I think that's quite new in this industry because, again, everyone else was looking at it from a recreational side. And when they started producing these more, what we would call non-inhalation products, they usually look for shortcuts where we're treating it as a drug. So we're taking a much more sophisticated pathway.
Right. I can tell you that me personally, I mean, I've got tubs of BioFreeze and some other hemp products that supposedly were, you know, better than the average ointment out there. And I got to tell you, none of them worked, right? I mean, they work for about 10 seconds while that cooling effect is happening.
Yeah, that's the menthol.
And then
right?
it's
They all
done,
have menthol or camphor, like your Tiger Bombs, right? Like it makes you feel like it's working, but it's not doing much, right?
Right. It's just heating up the area or cooling up the area, whatever the hell it's doing, but it doesn't fix the problem. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Right. So your product is actually effective in and I'm going to have to get some of that stuff. Because you get older,
in
man.
The US, I can get it for you. We have it under a different brand in the United States. We're collaborating with, I think I mentioned this to you before, we're collaborating with the former NBA great Al Harrington, Allen Iverson, all those guys are involved, and the NBA is involved, NBA Players Association is involved, and we have the same technology, the same formulations under a brand Replay that will be launching in the United States in the next few weeks, and the products will be available online, so you can try the products. You know, and I think what we can guarantee, what we can deliver today, and I can tell you that as a CEO, is that the product will deliver the cannabinoids transdermally. They will get past the skin. They will get to the joints and muscles. Is it going to cure your illnesses? No. Is it going to potentially help particular inflammatory pain symptoms and symptom management? Likely. But again, this is something that we are clinically proving. We're doing the studies now. We've conducted the preclinical work with animals. We're now moving on to human studies. But what I can tell you is I'm selling a ton of these products in Canada, and the feedback has been tremendous. A lot of people have had a lot of relief. So I can rely on the anecdotal data to date. It's not something I can use to make a claim, but I can tell you, again, from anecdotally, I'm using it, family members are using it, a lot of patients and consumers are using it, and we hope to clinically prove why and how these products are working very soon.
So I have to tell you something, man. I can't smoke pot, right? So I'm allergic to pot. I learned this when I was a young man, and I would have like a violent reaction, like sick. I would get sick. Yeah. And so I don't mess with cannabis. I just don't mess with the stuff, right? Because it was a really bad experience. But I just got over having Omicron for the last 7 days, and it
How do you feel?
kicked the shit out of me. Okay. Luckily, I mean, I was vaxxed, you know, with the booster. I don't know what it would have been like without those things, because this thing, literally, I couldn't leave my bed for 5 days. The body aches were so intense. There was nothing I could do to get comfortable, nothing. And so a buddy of mine actually contacted me and said, Tim, go get a gummy, right? And I mean, I'm so paranoid about the reaction that I have. I was like, but I actually went and got a gummy, and I swear to God, I completely understand why people are given this for cancer. I mean, every body ache that I had was gone. I mean, and I was loading up on NyQuil, all this other stuff that was doing absolutely nothing, right? One gummy, and I swear to God, I could not believe how good I felt. It was unbelievable to me. So for me, I was unsure about the medical quality or assistance. You know what I mean? I just never really knew if that was, but I am a full-blown believer now after that.
Look, Tim, it's working, right? I mean, like, there's no doubt that people that are suffering from pain, sleep, for sure, those are like, there's some major areas that is beyond the debate at this stage. Like, there's an FDA drug approved with CBD for epileptic seizures. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of patients that are today using cannabinoid-based medicine for chronic pain, for sleep. Those are a given. What's like, the signals for efficacy are there. There are, right? But what the problem with the industry is that it's mixed into the recreational side, and then you're naturally going to get that stigma. I had very early on in my role as the CEO of this company, I had one of the biggest medical institutions in Canada, a children's hospital, and the head of the dermatology department said, "Hey, look, can you guys put together a topical cream that will deliver the cannabinoids in a local way that can help with a rare skin disease?" And we've done that, and that product is actually launching next week. But at the time, I didn't realize that cannabinoids can be delivered topically, for example, for a skin disease. And I said, "Well, I think we can do it." "Yes, of course." She said, "I have patients today that have heard that cannabinoids can help with this rare skin disease. So they're allowing their children to smoke cannabis because they're hoping to get that benefit." And it's
right.
And that's not how it works, right? So this is actually the product. It's right here. This is the Spanish version of it, but 3% CBD cream. So this is not, kids don't have to smoke this, and the kids don't have to get high, and we're getting them theoretically the benefit. But my point is, just because something can work doesn't mean every part of that is going to work or every delivery. So our job and what we've set our mission to do is to standardize it. So if you're telling me that gummy worked for you, okay, but do you want to then try that again? And do you expect it to be the same dose? Do you expect the same delivery, the same dose? And if it worked in a particular way, you want that standardized so that you can rely on it batch over batch, time over time. And the problem with this industry is, especially in the earlier stages, physicians couldn't rely on that. Physicians couldn't rely on the consistency, the accuracy of the dose. Physicians couldn't rely on, are they going to have the same repeatable experience for their patients? So the first thing we got was like, let's get these products delivered accurately. So if a patient is having one gummy and they think that is 1 milligram of THC or 5 milligrams of THC, which is pretty high, that's repeatable and it's accurate, then consistent, and then to go and find the right evidence and to develop these formulations in a way that you can then say, look, Tim, are you looking for something that acts fast? Or are you looking because you have neuropathic pain or chronic pain? Then I'll give you the product in a sublingual delivery that's fast. Or are you looking for something that is going to help you stay asleep, which is then going to be a slow, right? So I think the level of sophistication that goes into medicine versus a level of sophistication that goes into a recreational product is very, very different. That's it. That's, I think, the macro, but of course, we're pinned into this kind of cannabis category, which is in many ways commodifying, right?
No, you know what? I think what the approach that you're taking is the right one. It just takes a long time. And the bottom line is, I think people have known for a long time that cannabis works for a lot of different things, right? I mean, there's just too many people that say it works, whether that is what do I want to say, a placebo effect or what, it doesn't matter. They still believe it works, right? Yeah. And bottom line is it does work. So let me ask you, how many drugs is it that you want to develop? I mean, what is the big cojones that you want to get developed, or is there one?
Look, we have commercialized, I think, about 30 something products so far. A number of them are cosmetics, under the cosmetics category. They're dermatology products like acne, eczema. Those are relatively low hanging fruit. We have now commercialized a number of oral, sublingual, transdermal deliveries, and those are already all commercialized in a couple of countries as well in terms of medical cannabis. In terms of drugs, our first drug that I was mentioning earlier that will be delivered is very high CBD, no THC. It'll generally be utilized as an epileptic treatment. That will be this year. I think by the end of next year, we will probably have 4 to 5 different drugs commercialized in various countries, and they will range from neuropathic pain. One will be for chronic pain, one is for dermatology, one is a local pain, which is the inflammatory, epilepsy, anxiety. So there's probably going to be 5 or 6 different drugs within our pipeline that will reach maturity, I think, next year. The challenge then becomes, those are products that are commercial in South America, particularly European jurisdictions, Caribbean jurisdictions. The challenge then becomes, how many of those can you register with the FDA? So we will be generating revenue with way more than one drug over the next 3 years, I think in various countries. But in terms of the FDA, we're still trying to determine which product we proceed with in terms of the FDA pathway. And the result of that, or the decision of that, will be made through the sales, the data, the clinical efficacy that we're seeing now through our commercial and clinical efforts. So it's a very complex question to give you a simple answer on, but what I can say is that we have an extensive pipeline. Our pipeline includes about 65 formulations or products that we're testing right now. We're testing the market. So we're testing them not just clinically, but we're testing them in the marketplace with patients and seeing how they react to it, see where the outcomes are the best, seeing where the potential from a market perspective is the best as well.
So how are the margins on the products that you're currently out there selling?
Good question. I mean, if you look at the cannabis industry, one of the reasons why it's gone beaten up recently is the commodification of flower, right? If everyone's growing good flower, it really becomes a battle of, what's the potency, how high is your THC, and then how cheap is your bud. Where on the medical side, it's more about the quality and the integrity and of course the formulation. So we're maintaining relatively good margins in Canada, more in the, I would say, 40% range in Canada, where we outsource manufacturing, we outsource sort of commercialization to the pharmacy partners. But as more and more of our products commercialize outside of Canada, and we're actually utilizing our own global cultivation, extraction, and manufacturing, which is in South America, those margins are higher. So when you're talking about pharmaceutical drugs, we're in the 60 to 75, 80% margin, which is more pharmaceutical territory. And I think those are territories that, the recreational side will just never see, right? Because it's just way too many people, way too many suppliers, way too much supply, way too many producers. Where on the pharmaceutical side, there's a lot more entry barriers, a lot more requirements. And once you get there, we have those margins because of our vertical integration.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, yeah, it's interesting to see the whole cycle that cannabis has kind of gone through, right? I mean, we're in the US, we're still not federally legal. And who knows when that may ever happen? I don't know. At some point, I think it will. But
it will.
I mean, it's a tough space to really. You look at all the guys that came out with these huge facilities to grow all of this pot, and there, in my head, wasn't enough demand to take all that pot, right? So,
and it was just wasted resources, And there's a video recording, if you're interested, I'd love to share with you, Tim. 3 years ago, I presented here in Canada. We hosted a medical symposium, and we had all the biggest hospitals, biggest physicians. And I did, everyone else was obviously presenting science and data, and I presented as the business guy in an industry critique. And I have the recording, and it was 3 years ago. And I came up and I said, look, these are the gaps I see in the industry. A, why are we growing so much in an indoor factory, which is completely environmentally unsustainable? It makes no sense. And here's the environmental reasons why growing in an indoor factory with AC air, like heaters and CO2 pumps and 1,000 watt high pressure sodium lights is not sustainable versus the way I'm growing it in Colombia, which is without lights, et cetera, et cetera. That's one. Two, why the hell are we, how the hell are we raising $12 billion as an industry? We did in 2018. I think 2019, we raised $12 billion, and less than 0.1% of that was then spent on R&D and clinical. Like, how do you say this is medicine, but you raised $12 billion as an industry, and we spent a tiny fraction of that on proving this medicine works or improving the delivery of this medicine? So three was quality. Like Health Canada, which is our FDA, is letting us commercialize products without stability, without proper testing, with all of this stuff. And then there's going to be quality concerns. And then 3 months after that, the vaporizer thing happened, where, all these instances. So unfortunately, for my sake, a lot of what I had predicted to be the deficiencies or the critique of the industry ended up being true. But unfortunately, on my sake, is we also got beat up with that, because everyone's like, Avicanna, cannabis, right? And that's kind of the issue. And I think today you're just seeing the results of that. You have companies that were given $5 billion to build a corporation, and majority of that money, I would comfortably tell you today, was blown, right? It was wasted. I've spent a 1% of that since inception, and I've built, a platform, clinical, drugs. I'm in 14 countries. So how do you separate that, right? And I think the reason why the investors or the investment community is unhappy with the cannabis sector is poor management, is all those critical items that we pointed out. I'm sure most of the sophisticated investors noted back then. But that doesn't mean the potential of cannabinoid-based products or all the companies are bad. There's going to be winners, just like the dot-com bubble burst. It burst.
That's a perfect example, right? I mean, there were a whole bunch of dot-com garbage companies back in the dot-com boom, right? You just attached a .com to the end of your name, and you were hot. I mean, you were hot. Then when that died, right? Not all .com companies were bad. You just had to weed out a bunch of the garbage, right?
But they all got beat up, right? They all, like the Amazons, got beat up.
Everything got beat up.
From the ashes are going to come out your winners. And I think, look, the industry is very real. If I would have told you, Tim, 10 years ago, if I would have told you the cannabis industry, whether it's medical and recreational, let's say the combined in Canada is a $4 billion market, legal, you would have said, well, that's crazy. That's a good investment. I'm going to go buy some weed stuff, right? And I think that's what happened, right? Everyone did that. So the industry is real. The demand is real from a recreational lifestyle.
And it's not going back. We're not going back. There's
no regulation that's going back. And that's the difference. Like medical and pharmaceutical applications of cannabinoids can be exported. That's a very big distinction most people don't realize. If you're the best recreational company in the state of California, you still can't go to Ohio. You still got to go into Ohio and build a new factory, right? If you're the best recreational cannabis company of Canada, you still cannot export to England a recreational product. But a medical and a pharma company operates at a global level. So the question I would ask the investment community to ask themselves is, do you really think there's going to be steps taken back? Do we really think one day we're going to wake up in Australia or Canada's prime minister is going to say, you know what? We were wrong about medical cannabis and we're going to now make it legal again. There's no way. It's not happening. So the regulations are going the other way. The question is, what is the market potential? And I think it's massive because it's not weed, it's pain.
What do you feel the total addressable market is?
It's a scary number, I think, once you get it right, Tim. And I think I would answer it in this way, because I think it's a portion of the cosmetic market, right? Like the same way you have Avene, Neutrogena from J&J, you can have my Pure Earth skincare products that are functional. I think it's the chronic pain, market, which is a huge market on its own. I think it's the oncology market in terms of palliative care, symptom management, like nausea, vomiting, etc. So I think the number is scary, but the challenge is, again, getting the regulatory approvals, getting the medical community acceptance, getting the drugs approved. And I don't think every country is only going to rely on drugs. And this is my personal theory on this is, yes, do I intend to have pharmaceutical drugs approved in Canada? I do. I intend to do so. But I'm already selling 16 SKUs medically without drug approvals. I'm selling it under medical cannabis. And I think there will be a general medical cannabis category as like a functional product, supplement, natural health product, whatever you want to call it. And I think that category alone is huge. So I think the addressable market size, in my opinion, in terms of medical, functional, pharmaceutical cannabinoids, is 5 times bigger than the recreational, but it's going to take a much longer period of time. And the reason why I'm saying it's 5 times larger is because I, as a global company, I'm looking at a globe. I'm not looking at my province or my state or my country.
Right. So I happen to agree with you. You just had something. Are you in Colombia right now?
No, I'm back in Toronto.
Okay. But you were just in Colombia, right? And you grow in Colombia, right?
Absolutely.
So something just happened in Colombia that was big for medical cannabis there, right? They just passed. I mean, I think every insurance company in Colombia now has to cover cannabis, right?
Yeah, for chronic pain, for a lot of chronic conditions. So look, in Colombia, we treat Colombia as our global supply chain. So it's not a big domestic market for us, as you can appreciate. But we cultivate there. We are organic certified, USDA organic certified. We do our cultivation there. We do our extraction. We then transport the cannabinoids to our pharmaceutical plant where we do the manufacturing. So that's really where we produce for the rest of the world, which I think obviously logically makes a lot of sense. And of course, economically and from an environmental sustainability perspective, it's the right fit. But you're seeing other positive signals in terms of domestic market in Colombia, which is now any physician can prescribe medical cannabis for chronic indications, and the government has to pay for it in terms of insurance. It's a complicated process. Let me be frank, but it's a huge signal of the potential and the trend that's happening at a global level, right? So I think that's pretty exciting. The other thing that is relatively exciting, much more so for some of our peers in Colombia, but also for us as well, is the potential ability to export flower. You know, because Colombia produces, and if you see any of our corporate videos, we produce these gorgeous plants without any intervention because we're in the perfect environmental conditions. And I'm producing those plants at 5 cents a gram, where an indoor produced flower in Canada, United States is $1 to $2. So we do produce at a fraction of the cost, but the Colombian government was not permitting cannabis companies to export for medical or pharma purposes flower. They were saying it has to be a derivative. So now they're allowing the flower to potentially be exported, we believe, sometime this month. And that will be a big announcement for the industry because it's very hard to compete with that if you're in Canada or the United States.
Right. That would be impossible to compete with that.
I would, yeah, I think I would correct that as it would be impossible.
From a price perspective,
right? Like recreationally, I get it. I can't export to you. If you want to sell my weed, let's call it weed, in a dispensary in Colorado, it's not going to happen. I cannot do that. And then at that point, you also have the farm to table. Like I want my flower to be for my own region. Fine. That's not my industry. That's not my playing field. But at a global medical pharmaceutical level, how could you compete with 5 cents a gram? And we're not even in industrial scale. We're like sort of in pilot scale, and we're hitting those numbers.
So how many actual brands how many different brands of your products do you have? You have 4?
So Roll Phyto is our medical brand, and that's the brand that's in the largest pharmacy chain in Canada. It's also in the hospitals. Pura is our skincare line. Those are our brands, trademarked, and those are all patent pending formulations. And then we have 2 brands that are part of a partnership with Al Harrington, and then one is Viola and one is Replay. They're our formulations in many ways. Replay is our formulations. Some of the Viola ones are in terms of Canada, where we've commercialized those in Canada, and they've been good revenue drivers for us. You know, so those are 2 brands that we collaborate with in terms of leveraging off of our infrastructure for commercialization purposes, and they're good early revenue for us because, as you I'm sure know, pharma medical takes a little bit longer periods of time. And then in terms of our drugs, our own drugs, we trademark them individually. So I think in the next slide, you have one of our products, which is Trunerex. So that will then be its own kind of trademark and its own brand. And so that's our first kind of drug preparation, Trunerex, which is again trademarked.
Okay. All right. Let's talk real quickly about the financial health of the company. We talked about this last time, right? I mean, you're in a very unique position as a biotech company, but you're still in a position where you're having to go to the capital markets, and that hasn't helped the stock at this particular point in time because we're going through turbulence in the markets overall, right? So where you just did what was it, a debt offering?
We did a convertible debenture. It was a relatively smaller one, like $1.5 million convertible debenture. That was all with existing shareholders, strategic, and frankly, we operate quite lean as a company, but our balance sheet was relatively weak. We wanted to just get a bit of a bridge to not have to do a financing at all-time lows where the stock was trading, right? And that was the objective behind the convertible debenture. We got that done. And well, now that that's done, we have a decent runway. We'll see when, but at some point we'll be going back into the market, ideally after a stock recovery, to do an equity raise.
Okay. Which, I mean, has to be expected, but your goal, Aras, is to get to self-sustainability, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, today I can tell you with our guidance, we reported revenue of 1.3 million. The quarter before that was 1 million. Before that was 800. Before that was 300. So we're growing at a pretty exponential rate, Q over Q. To 2020, we did about 1 million at 1.5 million. In 2020, 2021, we did 3.3 million. So we're growing pretty fast in terms of revenue. And our objective is by the end of this year to achieve self-sufficiency. And when I say self-sufficiency, means to be EBITDA positive, to be able to generate enough revenue and margin from our existing business units that are already commercial, so that we can fund, the longer term business models, which is the pharmaceutical, the R&D, and the clinical. And there's very few companies in the world that can achieve that, like to be self-sufficient through your early revenue business models. So in a simple way, I like to say it this way: to make enough money from my singles and doubles to fund my home runs. And I think we can achieve that by the end of this year. And once that happens, we become a self-sufficient, operating company that is not only operating and making money, but we're still funding that clinical development, the drug development, and the pharmaceuticals that are going to be your exits. They're going to be your acquisitions of whether someone's buying the intellectual property or potentially the company one day. But that's kind of where we're going. And if I was to shut down, I would tell you today, if I was to shut down my global low-cost production and my pharmaceutical clinical development, I will be profitable Q1 2022. Right? But I'm trying to maintain the integrity of those longer term visions, because I don't want to be just another medical cannabis or recreational cannabis company. We've spent years to build the scientific platform. First few years, nobody cared, frankly. They're like, why aren't you growing weed? Why aren't you selling joints? And I think ultimately, it's not going to be that type of retail investor that's going to appreciate what we've done. It's going to be a pharmaceutical company that's going to acquire the assets because they see.
Right. I mean, you've already said you've worked with Johnson & Johnson, which is no slouch, right?
Yeah.
They're pretty sizable pharmaceutical company. I think most people know who they are.
Yeah. They should. Yeah.
Right. They should. And then, so I mean, and just thinking about your delivery system for your topical, people can license that from you, right? I mean, there could be licensing opportunities for you elsewhere, right?
And distribution. I mean, like this year, from my perspective, and I can provide this as sort of a guidance, this year we will see Avicanna execute pharmaceutical deals with 2-3, top 50 pharma companies in the world, where they're supply agreements. So they're not just licensing of our intellectual property, but their actual delivery of our finished products. And it's because not only have we developed the intellectual property, we have tech transferred it, we have manufactured it, we have drafted the dossiers of it, and I can now deliver to them a finished pharmaceutical preparation. So it's beyond just the IP. We're already delivering products to people. So I'm signing supply agreements with big pharma, and that's kind of where we think this year is going to go for us. And once those are in, I think the value just starts showing itself. But in parallel with that, yes, we are licensing IP. So, like I mentioned earlier, there's 60 something formulations. Yeah, I might have commercialized 35. I may take 5 or 6 to the pharma level. But if someone else wants to build an entire drug platform from one of my formulations, they could. And there are those type of companies having those discussions with us. So the IP value, and my challenge here is we're Canadian, we're in Toronto. Toronto investors, Canadian investors, they don't understand intellectual property, right? They understand commodities. And if they put us in a cannabis category, where American investors, on the other hand, appreciate intellectual property and the exponential value of IP. So it's more about just getting that message out now and showing the proof of concept. But I think 2022 will be a really big year for us.
Okay. Let's talk about, at some point, you're going to want to do an uplist to a senior exchange, right?
Well, we're on a senior exchange now. We're on the Toronto Stock Exchange senior.
I'm talking in the US.
Yeah,
right?
Canada doesn't matter, right?
Right. Canada's not mattering to me, man.
No, you're right. So the reason why I say we're on a senior exchange now means it's not a long shot for us to list on the NASDAQ, right? We already are adhering to that level of, standard, that level of corporate governance, independent board members, and all of that. Like, we already do all of that, and we're doing it as a small company. So for us, it's really not that hard to be at that level. So we do aim to get there. I just want to get there when I'm self-sufficient, more meat on the bone, in terms of the revenue, a couple of drug deals in there in the pipeline. Because my biggest concern, the reason why we're not looking at NASDAQ today as an uplist and we're looking at it as a tomorrow project, is because of the Cannabinoid Association, the costs are higher. Like D&O insurance is higher, all these things are higher, right? So we're just waiting for a little bit of normalization, but we certainly intend to file and to be on a senior exchange in the United States.
Listen, I 100% agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think anybody should uplist to the NASDAQ just to uplist to the NASDAQ, right? I think you should have everything, all cylinders firing. Your sales should be hockey sticking, no sign of slowing down, because going to the NASDAQ is great, but if it becomes a battle to stay listed on the NASDAQ, it's a whole bunch of wasted time and energy and money, right? So if there were companies that took a more measured approach to getting on the NASDAQ, I mean, you get one shot. That's it, one shot. So
yeah, it's not today, right? I mean, look, we prematurely went public. I can tell you that now. It's I would call one of the regrets that I had was we went public in 2019, way too early. No revenue, very early stage. It was what everyone thought was a cool thing to do because the cannabis industry was ultra hot. We had access to very low cost capital, and fair, like it was the right thing to do considering those variables. But we decided to do an IPO and not an RTO. And by the time that we did the IPO, by the time we got out, that bubble had already burst. And I've been prematurely public for 3 years, and it's been nothing but a problem, right? In terms of additional costs, in terms of IR, audit fees, et cetera, for a company that's just building its foundation. So we already did that earlier. There's no way I'm uplisting early, but now I think as a company that is public, we are giving access to new investors to come in at, fundamentally the best position the company has ever been versus the lowest price of stock we've ever had. So I think it's a good buying opportunity for many people, but I'm still not ready to, incur $4 million a year in D&O insurance fees to be on NASDAQ. We're not there, but I hope to be there very soon. And I hope to be there when I can show self-sufficiency, because once I'm in the NASDAQ and I'm showing that hockey stick and I'm showing drugs and I'm showing patents, we will then have access to capital that will allow us to then exponentially grow the efforts on both commercialization and on drug development. And I think we need that at some point. I think it's, I would say 9 to 12 months away minimum.
Right. All right. So look, I want to take a look at the chart real quick, which is not a great chart. I mean, we've talked about it before. It's, I pay attention to the technicals and the fundamentals. I'm not just a tech guy, and I'm not just a fundamental guy. I look at them all. And the chart has been in a downtrend for a while, but this is not necessarily company specific. That we all know what happened with the whole cannabis space, right? So it was the big boom, and then it was the bust. But right now, you just put in a recent all-time low. Part of that had to do, I think, with the the timing of the latest offering, right? And the fact that the small cap, micro cap space has been getting pounded for 8 months has nothing to do with cannabis. It's just the small cap space in general, right?
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of small cap, micro cap, combination of cannabis hit all-time lows. You know, if there's a couple of ETFs, I always invite people to look at that are cannabis ETFs. And during January, they hit like 4-year, 5-year lows. So there is a general industry specific, I would call trough. There's obviously the micro cap hit that you know better than I do, obviously macroeconomic stuff, but it's been a combination of a couple of those things. And I think it was just kind of a perfect storm. We were not expecting it. We did put out guidance last week, and we've had, I think, a 20% or so stock recovery since then, because we're kind of going, well, look at where we're at fundamentally and where we're going versus where we're trading. The two don't add up, right? And I think the market is starting to respond to that, especially on the Canadian side, like on the TSX. You see less volume, obviously, on the US side, on the AVCNF. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. The picture is not pretty. I think that's where the opportunity can lie.
Right. Look, I mean, here's the thing. If you believe that the company definitely has a unique approach with, and I feel that you do, that you are coming up with pharmaceutical, medical solutions, right? That you have the proprietary knowledge on, and I think, especially if it works, right? If it delivers to, I mean, people are going to want to buy that again, right? The last thing I'm going to want to do is go buy another BioFreeze or the other 5 packets of things that don't work, right? If I can find one that works, that's the one I'm buying from this point forward.
Well, if you're gonna buy a gummy, you're gonna buy the same one again. And I think that's the difference between, and that's what people don't understand, the value of a medical product is that the patients are stickier, right? A patient, a 65-year-old lady, and we have a bullet in there in one of the slides. You don't have to go back, but one of the slides, our average demographic, like 75% of our sales is to 41-year-olds and above. I'm not selling weed to teenagers, right? I'm selling to, so imagine a 75-year-old lady is buying my topical or buying my CBD oral spray or whatever. She's not going to go back and experiment. She's not going to be like, well, that worked really well for me. Why don't we go try something else this time, right? Where on the recreational side, you may. If you're looking for the slides, one with shoppers, a couple of slides. One more, there. So no, that was it.
The other one?
Yeah. So if you look where it says 51% of the sales are women.
Okay, yeah, I see it.
Right? 75% of the sales are to 41-year-olds and above. Like that I purposely put that there because the expected demographic on the recreational side is like 20, 25-year-old males. Right? That's not my demographics. That's not my
that's not your bread and butter.
No, it's not. And those are the ones I like to buy different things. Something is nice, great. Next time I want to try something different. That's not how we work on a patient side.
Right.
An epileptic kid's mother who's buying the oils for the child that's managing his seizures, she's not going to experiment. She knows what dose is working. She knows that my products are being recommended by the neurologist in Toronto, in Canada, and she's buying that product for her child. And I know because something that is underestimated is I can't sell out. Tim, I cannot sell out. The guy who's selling recreational products can sell out and be sold out for a week. It's cool. In fact, you can say our products sold out in a day because that's how hot they were. I can't do that. When I sell out, I'm getting emails and calls from the patient's mothers, saying, hey, my kid needs a product. My kid's at a risk of seizure, so our level of responsibility is also very different. I cannot sell out. I'm dealing with patients. I'm dealing with the elderly. I'm dealing with children where my product has to be there. And I can tell you the large pharmacy chain that carries our products, they know the difference between our products and theirs. And we have a fantastic relationship with the Shoppers Drug Mart team. They know, like, our products cannot be sold out. We have policies in place with them. If we're sold out, everything is accelerated because they know that our products are actually helping people in a very different way.
All right. So here's the deal. Here's what we know. Company's got some great products. you are in a little bit of a in a cash, I don't know. You're in a kind of in a little cloudy area, right? We know that there's going to be an offering coming at some point, but that shouldn't stop somebody from saying, okay, look, I mean, if you want to take a starter position, right? You take a starter position. I mean, where are you at? The stock is just got down to about 30 cents. So you're sitting at right now, and this is US 42 cents right now, right? 42, 43 cents.
Yep.
I mean, the recent low was what, down to 23 or so? No, didn't get that low.
No, I mean, I just had an anxiety attack hearing that, but no, we didn't get that low. I think on the Canadian side, we got down to 40 cents, which is about 30 cents US. So pretty low. I mean, here's a note and here's a fact. The lowest price raise I have ever done, equity raise, was 85 cents Canadian. Okay. So
right.
the highest price equity raise I've ever done was $8. Just for the record, again, we're talking Canadian. That was when rainbows and butterflies. But I think most of the equity in this company, it's a very tightly held company, 45 million shares issued. 10, 12 people probably own 50-something% of the company, lots of institutions. I can tell you the average cost is way above where we are today. So I don't think these prices make any sense. I don't think it's in any way.
And you're not out there selling, you're not dumping your shares in the open market, are you?
I've never sold a share in my life. Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm
just checking, man. Yeah, I mean, you never know.
Available. That should be a signal. We've had obviously former employees that potentially were on the board or whatever that have resigned or whatever from the board that might have sold stock that are no longer have to announce that. But in terms of the management team today, the board today, if they sell, we would have to announce that obviously, and look at the trading, look at the reporting. I have never sold a share.
Right. These people are in for the long haul. This is not a short-term trade. You guys are looking to change the industry, build an industry, actually, validate an industry, create new products.
And I think we have in many ways, Tim. We've done a lot of the hard work, right? It's just
right.
We like, I mean, when I did my IPO at $8, I had no products commercial. I had no patents filed. I had no vertical integration built. I had no distribution. Today, I'm in 14 countries in terms of distribution. I got pharma deals. I have 35 commercial products. I'm doing revenue. We're doubling, tripling revenue every year. I have 9, US level FDA, US level patents submitted in terms of drugs. Like, it doesn't make sense to be trading 1/20th of that valuation. I think that $8 was probably frothy, but I think the 40 cents today also makes no sense.
Let me ask you a question. This is your first round as a CEO of a publicly traded company, right?
I've been a COO of a small cap biotech company I was referring to earlier. In terms of oncology, I ran all their operations and clinical work. But it's my first round as a CEO of.
What have you learned?
Take the money when it's there at $8. I was offered 50 million. I took 25. I tell you that was one of the big lessons. Don't go public prematurely. That was probably the biggest lesson. Don't underestimate exogenous factors. You could be hitting home runs in-house all day long, but you face a pandemic and a sector burst and nobody gives a shit. That's just a reality. So a lot of that, I think I learned, pivoting fast. I think we've always done a very good job of that. And I think a lot of the guys on the team being MBAs, management consultants, like, we pivot really fast, but the speed of your pivot, the speed of your adaptability is key in an emerging industry where things go up and down. I think that was important. You
gotta be thick-skinned. You gotta be thick-skinned, right?
Thick-skinned and relationships, man. Relationships. I think that part is super underestimated. I didn't learn that in business school. If I didn't have the shareholders that I've had and the mentors I've had, the board members I've had, we would not be alive today as a company. So it was the relationships. I think a lot of those guys believe in the way we execute as a team, believe in the integrity of the way we do things, and we've had their support. And without that, when things go like, when everything's great, all the bankers call you every day. Hey, Aras, you want Leafs tickets? You want to go to the Raptors game? And they disappear when poo hits the fan, right? And it's been the relationships that I think has been key, right? With the partners, with the shareholders, etc.
Yeah. So, it's funny that you say that because, when things are good, and I mean, when things were, just 9 months ago, 10 months ago, I was meeting with companies and all these guys are telling me about how banks are knocking down their door because they want to loan them money. Let's do a cap raise, right? But these guys are not your friends, man. These guys are,
they're real estate agents. That's the way I look at bankers these days.
Yeah. I mean, they're not always your friend. And a lot of times small companies, they don't know. They wind up doing the deal with the devil, right?
Yeah.
And they get all the warrants and the preferreds and dilute the shit out of the current shareholders, the people that really are supporting you. And the banks, I mean, there's shady shit that goes on out there is all I can
tell you. It might be worse in Canada because and I hope this doesn't gets used against me, but the Ontario Securities Commission just does not have the same level of teeth that the SEC has in the United States. So the bankers, the hedge funds, the naked shorts, all that stuff that takes place in Canada, you guys just can't get away with that in the US as easy, right? So it's probably worse here in many ways, unfortunately. But one thing that you will notice if you look back at our financings is I do private placements. They're non-brokered. I consistently have raised money for this company through the network, through the supporters. And if these shareholders did not believe in this company, I would not have been able to do that. I have not done a sleazy dilutive round with bankers where I issued crazy levels of shares or warrants. My cap tables are tight. And it's because I learned very early on that, hey, you're on your own. You got to work with your support team. You got to respect that because they're the guys that are going to have your back when, things get hard. And we have not let in what will be the bad players. And I think, sure, maybe if I did earlier on, as they say, pay the street, if we would have played that game, I think we probably might have had a little bit more support, but I would argue we wouldn't have. I think today we're tighter with the cap tables. We're a lot closer as a group of shareholders. And when this thing takes off, it's going to be like an elastic band. One of our big shareholders always says that. It's being pulled back. And, I think you can go.
So let me ask you a question, man. If everything were to go perfectly for you, where would you guys be in the next 6 months? Right. I mean,
okay.
What is it that you just, if you in 6 months you achieve this, and this, you are happy?
Okay, I'll go in priority sequence. I will have executed 2 very important pharmaceutical deals that are supply agreements. I would have done some sort of equity raise at a much better price than where we're trading today. I would have further commercialized and progressed in terms of my revenue generation as within the same trajectory that I'm on, 30-40% growth a quarter. So in 2 quarters from now, I should be in the X million revenue. And I think if I do all of that and I just continue to deliver on what we're doing, we're on the right track. Everything else has already been built, right? So it's more now the supply agreements, the commercialization, and a strategic sort of equity raise, and we're good.
So getting to the point where I would say probably the biggest thing is to get to a point where you're not going to be in need of cash at all, right?
Yeah, that's the key, right? Like with those, like that's the other thing what I've done, Tim, is a lot of the pharmaceutical deals I'm putting in place, I'm demanding licensing fees. And that's because I talk to the big pharma guys and I say, great, you want to come into the industry now, welcome. However, I've spent 6 years to build the vertical integration, to have the supply of the active ingredients you need, to have the formulations and the products and the manufacturing. And by the time you guys get your stuff together and you get your first order in your hand, it's going to be another 6 to 9 months. And I've already paid my dues. Now you got to pay yours, right? So that's kind of the general discussions we're having now with big pharma companies, and they're paying, they're agreeing to that. So I think the pharma deals not only are massive validations and huge revenue potential, et cetera, but they're also pretty good support in terms of cash flow.
Okay.
So yes, it's all of that and equity and all that other stuff kind of coincides. The revenue generation progressing the way it is, we're on that trajectory to become self-sufficient. And I think once we don't need capital, the only way you can get the stock, whether you're short or whether you're long, is to buy it in the market. And I can tell you, there is not much of a supply.
Right. Now, listen, man, I love the story, and I want, that's why I wanted to get this interview done, get your story out to as many people as we can. I think it's a good story. I think it's a good company. I think it's based upon science, and I think that's a really good approach. It's a hard approach. It's a costly approach, but you found a way to get some products already out there in a very quick fashion. So there are a lot of different things that could happen here. I mean, you guys could get acquired, right? Why wouldn't a big pharma just say, you know what, let's gobble these guys up right now, right? Hopefully you wouldn't do that, because this would be the worst place to sell it.
No, I mean, I can tell you right now, even if I wanted to at these prices, I'm not getting shareholder approval. And I think the reality is pharma companies rather pay a little more, but wait a little bit longer. So I think that's aligned with the trajectory we're on. I think that would be ultimately a good exit. I'll be honest, we have considered acquisition offers that have come in because we have to in terms of fiduciary duty, but they've been from cannabis companies, and we're not doing it unless the valuation is ridiculous, because this is a pharma exit, right? Ultimately, and I don't think it's today. I think it's down the line, but I think it will be at a way higher valuation.
On average, how many hours you work a day?
16 to 18. Hey man, entrepreneurial life. Luckily, I don't have kids. I can tell you that today. I can still go. I got a couple more years left.
Do you have a significant other?
I do have a significant other. She's very understanding, and
that's pretty cool, because that's rare, man.
And I can tell you, during COVID, most people didn't leave their house. I had 74 flights. I've gone back to Colombia 8 times during COVID. So you know what? I'm moving, man. I'm moving around. I'm making things happen, and I think we're building a real enterprise here. That it takes that kind of.
And you've done all this through a pandemic. I mean, let's not. Right.
Yeah,
right.
That small thing that happened.
That little tiny thing that has happened that never happened before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's been tough, but I have an amazing team, Tim. Like the team is unbelievable, and most of the guys, like I can tell you from my 20 top senior people around the world, 18 of them have been there for 3 years. They're all just grinding through it. They all know what they have, right? And yeah, sometimes it sucks to look at the stock price and think, and be like, we're not getting the value you deserve. But then they join a call with, J&J senior management or some big pharma company, and they're saying, we only want to carry your products because of who you guys are and your credibility. And that's what gets you up. That's what keeps you going. And seeing those patients get benefit from the products, like, we know the potential. The rest is just a misunderstanding or misconception, right? So it's starting to show itself. And I think we're past the stage where we want to tell stories. We want to show, and we're starting to show it already. So I think people will start seeing the signals.
I think this is going to be a great story in the long run. I think you're going to go through, it's definitely not going to be easy, but I think it's going to get easier for you.
Well, it better.
It's not going to be easy, but it's going to get easier. So here's what I want to do, man. I'm gonna send this out to my members. I'm gonna send it out to social, of course, but I want to circle back with you when you think would be a good time for me. And maybe it would be one of those times when you finalize one of the pharma deals, right?
Yeah, I would love to do that. I think look, what I've said about the pharma deals we've hinted at, so I'm not sort of offside, but I would love to get an opportunity to then explain them, right? Like once they're announced.
Yeah.
To get into the specifics as to what that means, the addressable market size, the margins, what that means in terms of other drugs, other markets. Like, there's a lot to dig into that, because we do have this very unique opportunity to commercialize these drugs this year. This is not, I'm not saying in 12 years, I'm going to call you, Tim, and say, I got my, we're there, so it's pretty exciting. I hope everything works out. Obviously, there's a lot of irons in the fire, and we're moving everything We try to reduce variability or regulatory and logistic risk, etc., with planning and forecasting and doing our homework, but still volatile out there, So that's why we have multiple irons in the fire, multiple hands, multiple markets, multiple products, multiple segments, and it is one of them. Like we have a new board member, Eileen. She's fantastic. She just joined us. She was the former head of sort of commercialization for AstraZeneca, and she's like, we spend years analyzing. Do we commercialize this product or do we commercialize that product? You guys commercialize and then analyze, So it's actually quite a unique opportunity, right? Because you're really seeing what works through clinical, like through medical efficacy from the patients, but also from the market. Like, are you selling? Right? Like this guy is a fantastic seller. Like I know it's a fantastic seller, right? Because I see the results. So this is the kind of stuff that we have as an opportunity, and I think it's going to really help and guide the future of this company as we go.
No, it's good. I like that you stay focused. I like that you're a hard ass worker, and you're a very transparent guy, right? I don't feel like you're there's some guys that are really good at telling a story, but not necessarily ever able to deliver and execute. Right. So I think you are very focused. I think you're a straight shooter. I think you got a great product. And I think it's a story definitely worth, at these levels, I look at the chart and say, okay, yes. Can it go back down to 25 cents? Sure. Could it go down to 5 cents? Possibly. But do I think that you guys are going to disappear? Not a chance. Right. No. So the question is, do I want to throw in with you and have faith that you're going to be able to see what you've been working on for the last, I think eventually you're going to get there, right? You just got to be patient. So this is a great opportunity, right?
Well, I appreciate all the kind words, Tim. Yes, and I couldn't agree more with you. I think the fundamentals are there. One of our biggest shareholders said, look, I always invested in the home runs you're going to hit, like with drugs. But he's like, the fact that you then took the opportunity to commercialize and to get these singles and doubles is good for some shareholders because there's a safety net. There's a base intrinsic value now, right? And I think we are past that stage. Like to have that many products out as a biotech company, like it's not an easy challenge, and it's certainly not a $15-20 million market cap company that has done that, right? So I think we've done the hard work. We've been unlucky in many ways. A lot of lessons learned. Certainly mistakes were made. I think to be in such a volatile new industry with all these things changing, no one hit it perfectly, but I think the proof's in the pudding, and it's going to show itself.
Okay, man. Aras, thank you so much for coming in and doing this interview. I'm going to shut it down unless you feel as though I missed something. I think we covered things pretty well, right? I'm going to stop recording. And we will definitely do a follow-up in the near future.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, Tim.
Thank you, guys.
Hey there, fellow investors. Thanks for tuning in for yet another CEO interview here at Alpha Wolf Trading. Today it was with Avicanna CEO Aras Azadian. Ticker symbol AVCNF. I hope you enjoyed today's interview. And if you did, do us a favor, give us a like. How about giving us a share? And while you're at it, why not give us a follow? Until next time, stay safe. Alpha Wolf Trading wishes you the very best of success.